I used to live in Canada before I moved to Dubai, and in this video I want to compare the expected cost of living with the most comparable city in Canada, Toronto to Dubai. And let me tell you, it might not be what you'd expect. Now the numbers from this video will be from a website called Numbeo, the world's largest cost of living database. For these examples and categories, I'll be showing costs in dirham and Canadian dollar to get the best perspective. Now let's start with potentially the most important expense, renting. Depending on where you rent in Dubai, it can either be more expensive or much less in cost than Toronto. In this case, we'll be comparing the rental costs both inside the city center and outside the city center. Starting with a one-bedroom apartment, as you can see on the screen, a one-bedroom apartment in the city center in Dubai versus Toronto would be around 16% more expensive in Dubai. Meanwhile, a one-bedroom apartment outside the city center would be 16% less expensive in Dubai compared to Toronto. Now for a three-bedroom apartment inside the city center would be 20% more expensive in Dubai versus Toronto. Now a three-bedroom apartment outside the city center would be 6% more expensive in Dubai than it were to be in Toronto. So it really depends on what you want to rent and where you want to rent it, which will determine the precise cost of the rental. Now instead of renting, let's move on to the cost differences of actually buying real estate in both cities. This is where we have the major differences, because as we all know, Canadian real estate, especially in big cities like Toronto, has gotten absurdly expensive due to a number of reasons. In comparison, real estate to purchase in Dubai is very reasonable and much less expensive than Canada. For this example, we also compare the costs of buying inside the city center and outside the city center. And as we can see on the screen, the price per square meter to buy an apartment inside the city center in Toronto is 118% more expensive than it is to buy in Dubai. You can see the average prices on the screen right here in both dirham and in Canadian dollar. You can see it's 6,500 Canadian dollars. That's a price per square meter in Dubai versus 14,316 Canadian dollars for the price per square meter in Toronto, which is an insane difference. Now, if we're looking at the price per square meter to buy an apartment outside the city center, it is even more expensive, 182% more expensive to buy an apartment per square meter in Toronto outside the city center than it is in Dubai outside the city center. So for what you actually get, there's an insane difference in the price of purchasing real estate in Dubai versus Toronto, with Toronto being much more expensive. Now moving on to the cost of food, another common expense to keep in mind, we can see the differences on the screen here. Now we have a pretty in-depth breakdown here of the different scenarios and situations. The cost of a meal at an inexpensive restaurant will be 74% more expensive in Toronto versus in Dubai. A meal for two at a mid-range restaurant, 3 courses, will be 7% more expensive in Toronto. Then we have certain products like McDonald's, a combo meal right here we can see is 15% more expensive in Toronto than in Dubai. We have beer that's more expensive in Dubai, 50%. We have imported beer, 50% more expensive. Cappuccino, so coffee is more expensive in Dubai by 30%. And then we have water, which is 45% less expensive in Dubai. Now for actually purchasing groceries to make meals at home, the cost difference between Toronto and Dubai is staggering. And this could be attributed to the ease of access that Dubai has and their infrastructure for trade and importing these types of goods. And as you can see on the screen here, overall, the price of basic groceries is much cheaper in Dubai versus Toronto. We can see the list right here, starting with milk being 61% less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto, bread being 71% less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto. Some other goods to mention, tomatoes are 128% less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto. And then we have other goods like chicken, which is 47% less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto. Beef is 38% less expensive. Apples, bananas, oranges, potatoes, all of these goods are overall less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto, which would make grocery shopping a lot less cheap in Dubai. The next cost that we'll consider is transportation, the cost of moving around within the cities. So we can see on the screen here, taxis in Dubai are 78% less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto. Overall public transport is less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto. Gas is also much less expensive in Dubai than in Toronto, 41% to be precise. And overall, the cost of transportation in Dubai is less than Toronto. And finally, the last cost that I want to go over is the cost of gyms or the cost of activity. And as you can see on the screen here, in this case, Dubai is more expensive across the board for their gym memberships or, for example, renting a tennis court. But given that most people use their building gyms or their building amenities, it's really not a big deal. So the fee for fitness clubs or gyms can be considered as 42% more expensive in Dubai than in Toronto. Renting a tennis court for 1 hour can be 54% more expensive in Dubai than in Toronto. Going to a cinema or any leisure activities is around the same in both cities. Now, after assessing all of these numbers, Numbeo has determined that the cost of living is 14.4% more expensive in Toronto versus Dubai. But now that we've measured the expenses or expected cost of living in Dubai versus Toronto, let's also compare income after taxes in both cities. In this case, we'll be comparing the expected salary of 250,000 Canadian dollars in both cities, Toronto and Dubai. Now in Toronto, Canada, earning $250,000 Canadian, you first have federal taxes, which adds up to $54,961. Then you have provincial taxes, which adds up to $34,781. And finally, CPP, which adds up to $5,105. A total tax bill of 94,846 Canadian dollars, making your after-tax income $155,154 Canadian. So you can say that your monthly net pay before taxes is $20,833, but your monthly net pay after taxes is $12,929. Now in Dubai, if you're earning 250,000 Canadian dollars, there is no personal income tax. There's a 0% personal income tax rate in Dubai. So your net income after taxes, after everything, is 250,000 Canadian dollars. Now, when you're comparing the cost of living being much less in Dubai on top of the tax savings that you get by living in Dubai, it really becomes worth considering relocating to Dubai. On top of that, you can consider other things like safety, standard of living, opportunities within business, and much, much more, which are all things that Dubai has to offer over Canada and are the main reasons why I decided to make the move. So if you're looking to relocate to Dubai, set up a company here, obtain a residency visa, and open bank accounts, that's exactly what we specialize here at GenZone. Make sure to book a call with the link in our description, and our team will be glad to assist you.